Dennis, thank you for sharing your personal Long Beach history with us and the Long Beach community. So I guess we should start at the beginning, but before we do you agree to have this videotaped?
Sure, that's
okay,
fine.
and to be on Facebook?
Absolutely, no problem at all.
YouTube?
And YouTube.
And our site, right? And perhaps our forum. We want to share all that you bring to the...
The more the merrier.
Okay, fine. All right, so you just want to state your name?
Well, hi, I'm Dr. Dennis Carey, and I'm 78 years old, and I've lived in Long Beach, at least part-time, since I was born, or at least the summer after I was born in 1947. But more importantly is the fact that my grand-aunt bought the property on Wisconsin Street in March of 1921, so my family's been here over 105 years continuously in the same property. My great-aunt, Catherine A. Hurley, was the youngest of a large Irish immigrant family who came over when she was 4 years of age in about 1884. She, as the youngest, was sort of brought up with all these elder sisters and brothers, and they really invested in her. In 1900, she started at Hunter College in Manhattan and graduated in 1904 as a teacher. And I might say that she was the money bags of the family. She and her other siblings had, jobs as seamstresses and, probably maids, and worked in the Hamptons and whatnot during the summer. But anyway, so when she graduated, she went to work and worked for the most part in the same place in Borough Park, Brooklyn. And coming from the seashore in Ireland in Western Cork, in a town called Schull, right on the coast, I imagine that although she was only 4 when she left Ireland, that her siblings were drawn to the coast of Long Island here in Long Beach. When I was a child, my family lived with her sister Lizzie, her other sister Mary, her other sister, my maternal grandmother, Irene, my grandfather Jeremiah McCarthy, and their children. So March of 1921, they bought the lot on Wisconsin Street, and by the following summer of 22, the house was in place on that street, and it became the hub for the whole Hurley, McCarthy, and Grader family. Folks would come down pretty soon after that on the trolley from the Long Island Railroad down to the west end of Long Beach. My mother was 4 years old in 1922. Matter of fact, she was still 3 years old. And I do have photographs from that year of family members sitting on the bay. There was some open lots down that far on the west end at that time. It was interesting to see the garb of the people bathing with the long, it was probably at that time somewhat risque, well, we couldn't consider that now. Outfits for bathing were available, but the people wore these heavy woolen gowns that they wore into the water. And some of these are very precious pictures, especially seeing my mother when she was a 3-year-old and my aunt and some of their cousins and aunts and uncles. So that was the hub for people coming. My mother lived, spent every year of her life in Long Beach. And
did they live here full time or just in the summer?
No, we were summer people. We have that asterisk next to us, I suppose, even though we've been here so long. But my mother moved into the house permanently full time in 1998 after my father passed away. And so 6 of us have inherited the house, and I'll get back to that in due time. But my mother, everybody, they spent a lot of time both on the ocean but on the bay. And the bay being open, there was a lot of opportunity to do waterbound things. My everybody learned to swim over there. Everybody swam the bay, which was a great rite of passage. My mother's brother, Bob, Robert McCarthy, was a very entrepreneurial guy and was riding bicycle from Lido to deep into Atlantic Beach, delivering Western Union messages back in the day. Interesting enough, when he was 15, he had a little clamming business. He and his buddy from the street would row across the bay and collect clams and sell them for a penny a pop. And his brother, his friend's name was Morrison, but his friend Morrison stayed with his aunt and uncle Doris and Bill Turk. Bill Turk was a deputy inspector in the NYPD back then. But Morrison went on to a good amount of fame because he was known as Mickey Splain, perhaps the original Pulp Fiction author. As a teenager, he would entertain my mother and her friends on the beach or in open lots over fires and tell ghost stories that would send everybody home having nightmares. So not surprised that he went on to become a great writer. And so that was Morrison Splain. My Uncle Bob also was in the Navy. He had actually been in Pearl Harbor for the months leading up to the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, but had gotten out of there and later spent his time ferrying oil and airplanes across the Atlantic. But the other tie-in to Long Beach is that he was discharged from where else but the Lido Hotel after the war was over in 1945, and that was a regular de-embarkation center that a lot of people
Yes, it was the prototype for the first separation center in the country.
As you know very well, you've written a great book about that, which I can plug for you because it's a fantastic story and part of the Long Beach story. My mother had two sisters and another brother, and they all spent their summers here and probably worked in different jobs. And that goes back to cousins of my mother as well. Some worked doing the same thing, Western Union. There was Pete Moriarty, was a fellow who owned the gas station between Virginia and Vermont, which is still there, and it's been there since the 19-teens, I believe. So I was born in 1947. I was the second child in my family. So we have pictures of my sister on the beach, probably at Tennessee. And in those days, there was not only wooden jetties. I believe the rock jetties in the West Ends weren't put in until 1947, and the wooden jetties were still visible for quite some time after that. And the water did come up quite to the back of the beach, and there was a bulkhead at that point in time. And I remember vaguely as a young one, I've seen pictures of my sister where we were behind the bulkheads because you didn't go really down to the shore, even before the new dredging occurred. About the dredging, of course, the major dredging in Long Beach occurred after William Reynolds purchased the area and stole from the sea and the bay sand to build this rectilinear island. But most people don't realize that the West End did not fully extend along Park Avenue beyond Minnesota Avenue till around 1926 when additional dredging occurred. And if you look at there's a great picture that the library has and many other people have, probably taken from the West End Club on Arizona Avenue, in which there's a shot west down Park Street. The People's Church is in the foreground. Also, an area where they had some festivals and parties. There's a lot that shows, hamburgers and bingo. And I think that was part of the West End Club. In fact, they had regular bingo outings there. One of my grand aunts, won a bingo and won an iron, and an iron board one time. The West End Club had races at the end of the summer on Labor Day, and my mother always was proud that she came in third in the junior 50-yard dash. Her friend Bessie Hunt came in first, but a younger girl who was 7, my mother was 8 at the time, Mary Rourke came in second. And Mary Rourke married a fellow named Farrell, and her sons, Tom Farrell and Peter Farrell, became great runners, including Tom Farrell winning a bronze medal at the Mexico Olympics in 1968. And she grew up on Delaware and Tennessee, and I knew Peter and Tom from high school. And it just shows that I was a halfway decent runner, but their mother beat my mother.
It's in the genes.
And it was in the genes. Another famous person who lived summers in Long Beach was Eleanor Holm. Eleanor Holm was an Olympic swimmer. She won a gold medal in the backstroke, I believe it was 1928, in Amsterdam, and her family was on Pennsylvania Avenue. Her niece and nephew are the Mirabella twins, Joey Mirabella and his sister, I think it's Dolores, and they lived on Pennsylvania. Joey, the late Joey, was a good friend of mine who was a lifeguard. I was a lifeguard starting in 1966 to 1972, but I started with swimming in Eleanor Holm. Growing up, we had the municipal pool on Lafayette Street, adjacent to the boardwalk, and that went in around 1938. But in 1923, the Olympia pool was built between Grand and Lindell Boulevard, and that was a heyday of sports in the U.S. The 1920s were known as the Roaring Twenties, but there also was a time of a lot of fun, and Reynolds talked about this being a playground, and certainly in that time period it was. Some of the greats of swimming, Gertrude Ederle, the first woman to swim, may have been the first person to swim the English Channel, swam here in races. Johnny Weissmuller, who became Tarzan in the movies, swam here several times. And even the great Duke Kawamoto, the father of modern surfing from Hawaii. The Duke was here, I believe, in 1918 selling war bonds near the end of World War I. And then he was here again in 1924, I believe, on the way to the Olympics that year. He had won the Olympic Games in 1912, the 100 meters swim, and also won, I believe, in 1920. He would have probably won in 1960, except there was a war going on, and so there were no Olympics at that time. So that swimming history is very important in Long Beach. As I mentioned, my mother and her siblings swim the bay. They swim in the bay all the time. Of the six of us, I have 5 siblings. Everybody except I swam the bay. I was always afraid that the tankers might come along that used to go to Oil City when I was swimming. But I was more than capable of swimming the bay. I was just a frightened teenager, I suppose. But one of my first memories of Long Beach was in 1952, going to the rides on the boardwalk, and that was an important occasion because at that time, my father, who had been a navigator on a B-17 in Europe in World War II and had been shot down and had been a prisoner of war in Germany, his co-pilot from that plane came to visit us from Wisconsin, and that was a big to-do for Bob Meyer to come, a farm boy from Wisconsin, to come to the big city. I thought he was going to come in combat boots, but he came in a business suit. And so as a 5-year-old, I was a little bit disappointed, but I loved going to the rides. And of course, over time, we would go to the rides and the arcades and play Fascination or mostly skee ball. Living all the way in the West End, down in Wisconsin Street, we didn't go to the rides that often. It was far for little kids. It was really after we started with the West End Rec, that Long Beach had a great recreation program in the summers, not only now but back then. So we would walk to West School every morning during the summer for the first half of the day. In the beginning, it was we would do events like square dancing, they had costume parties and very different things. Eventually got into playing softball on the field there with my friends. I was pretty terrible at softball, but some of the other kids were pretty good. I remember at least once or twice going to Yankee Stadium with a group of players, and from that association, and I believe that probably Billy Crystal was in that group. I didn't know Billy Crystal. He was just another kid playing softball in the East End, but they did merge those groups at times, and. So the summer was always fun. I had a lot of friends on Wisconsin Street. We knew just about everybody who lived in every house halfway down the street. Of course, things have changed greatly since Hurricane Sandy, and all these high houses have gone up. We're still one of the smaller houses.
You did not have your house lifted?
We did not have our house lifted. First of all, it was not my mother had passed away 2 years before, so nobody was living in there full time, and we did not have insurance, which turned out to be a good thing. For over almost 100 years, we didn't pay premiums, and we had 3 feet of water in the house, and the house is 4 feet up from the street. The street level, so there was 7 feet of water up to the Park Avenue sign on Wisconsin Street. It's one of the lowest parts in Long Beach, and there is some belief that the areas that were not original sand dunes, that were the land that was filled in and dredged, and part of the West End was that way, are lower. Even though you don't think there are hills in Long Beach, there is some gradations of elevation, so that, for example, along West Bay Drive, which used to be part of the Great Bay Hassock, which was an island north of the main island, there was virtually little flooding right there along the shore. So that's an interesting fact that my friend and lifeguard buddy, Pat Gallagher, who we did a program for the 100th anniversary of the city of Long Beach on the history of Long Beach in maps. And that was one of Pat's theories, and it seems to be somewhat true, although I don't know if we'll ever be able to prove that or what it means, but it's an interesting fact. In 1963 and 64, or the year before, I worked 2 years as a beachcomber. Beachcombers started at Lafayette Boulevard, which was the old pool, and we took our peach baskets and went east or west and met in the middle, collecting garbage from the beaches. Monday was always a bad day for picking up stuff because after the weekends, all the junk that was left on the beach. But that was a lot of fun. I met a number of additional friends at that time. My buddy Rick Barry, Jack Murphy. These are guys I went on to lifeguard with, and I started on the lifeguards in 1966. I worked several beaches. I worked Tennessee, Grand Boulevard, Laurelton. Then I went back to the West End and worked Arizona and Wyoming. And lifeguards was always a fun time, and it still is. The chiefs at that time were Gene Carbona, of the Long Beach Police Department, and Ronnie Quinn, and that was a great time. Perhaps more important was that a couple of years before that, my brother and I chipped in money and we bought our first surfboard in 1964, and bought the board for $80 from Butch Petrie, a surfer, lifeguard, and friend. And his father owned Petrie Meat Market in the West End, was there a long time inhabitant, a great fellow, and very good product sold there. The West End had its classical places over the years. Most people know the bars. They say there were 29 speakeasies in the West End during the 1920s. Shines, of course, it's been in town since 1912. That building was probably brought here from another site because Megan Casey, who owns the Shines with her husband Brandon, has some artifacts, including nails in the building that are from the 1800s. I mean, it could have been put in later, but I think she's probably right. Our house on Wisconsin Street was brought in by truck in 1922. A lot of the houses in the West End were brought in supposedly on the water. They were ferried in, and probably to New York Avenue, and then probably rolled on telephone poles down across the sand, because in 1922, the area was still sandy. The other thing, my mother always would talk about the bossets, and I thought she was talking about Bosset. These are the smaller bungalows you would see around. Many of them, there's still a few of them left over here. But actually they are bossets, Bossert, and they're named for Louis Bossert, who was a friend of Reynolds and owned perhaps one of the biggest lumber yards in the New York area, and that was in Brooklyn. So he had houses that were prefabs that just could be either brought in or built put together very easily. These were the they actually called one of them the West Ender, and so one of the questions about the West End is how did the West End get named, and I think there's still a little bit of controversy over it. One thought is that they were named after battleships. Now, all these streets were in by 1918, or certainly by 1920. So if they were named for battleships, they had to be battleships before that time period. And although I doubted that at first, there were battleships, U.S. battleships, with names of all of the streets before that time period. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were named for them. It could be true and unrelated, but we don't know. New York Avenue is the first street on the edge of the West End, and then you have California and Pennsylvania. There also were bungalows that were called the New Yorker, the Californian, and the Pennsylvania. So perhaps they were named that way, and then somebody just decided to keep going.
What did your aunt pay for the house when she first bought it?
Down payment was $25. The monthly fee was $50, and I believe it was total of $750 in 1921. So it was a good investment. And so 6 of us have we do inhabit, but we inherited this bungalow that was passed on from my grandaunt to my mother, and then to us. 3 of my siblings already, at the time of my mother's death, already owned houses in Long Beach. My sister Virginia lives on Nevada Street. Her husband, James or Jimmy Kavanaugh, also, spent from the time he was a high schooler in Long Beach, and has several family members who live here. He was a postman in the West End. My sister Virginia taught reading and special ed around Long Beach, but mostly at West School. My sister Irene and my brother Tom are twins, and they live one house apart from each other on West Hudson Street. And Irene, in one of her summers, she'd worked with Jack Murphy in getting the Nike school up in Lido up and running for the school district. I don't know exactly what their role was, but Jack Murphy was a realtor at one time in the West End. He grew up on Louisiana Street along with another good friend, Ben Gallinaro, a dentist in town, and they tell the story of when Lou Alcindor, who became Kareem Al-Jabbar, came to Long Beach, and played basketball with Billy Crystal at the Central School, which was a great hub for basketball, where Larry Brown played basketball. Larry Brown is one of the all-time greats of college basketball playing and professional, and became a coach, winning national championships, both in the pros but he was a grandson of I think it's Arthur Hittleman, and the Hittleman's Bakery was one of the fine bakeries in town. We had Model Bakery in the West End, where our president, Jeannie Everard at that time. Jeannie Brown worked, and all of us enjoyed that. I think we got our first rugula when my sister worked there, and the black and white cookies from Mr. Hiddleman, and that was great. The reminded me of, talking about rugula. One of the great things of Long Beach was the diversity we've always had here. One of my best friends from the early time was Stephen Horowitz, who lived on Virginia Avenue, and his mother would put cucumbers up on their back shower. And the end of the summer and the next summer and June or July, we would have kosher dills. That were great. And she introduced me to those, and noodle kugel. So that was some of the great things we had. Lost track of Stephen when we were 12 years of age, but we found each other again about 4 years ago, and we're just as good friends now as we were back then.
Did you ever attend the public school system in Long Beach, or you were just here for the
No,
summer?
we were here basically for the summer. The one interesting story in the summer, probably about 1923, 1924, my grandfather, Jerry McCarthy, who was a Boilermaker, decided to convert their coal burner in Bay Ridge to oil. And so the family stayed in Long Beach, and my Uncle Charlie, who was older than my mother, was registered and went to the school, the elementary school that at that time was where Central School is on Magnolia Boulevard. And my mother could have gone to kindergarten, but she had not gotten her vaccination, so they would not admit her. And so they lived here in the summer until November. Then the Long Beach house it's raised about 3 feet. There is a crawl space underneath the house, and so in November, when the winds in November started lifting the rugs in the living room off the floor into the air, my grandmother McCarthy. She decided to go back to Brooklyn and abandoned Long Beach. But as I said, heating was put in before my father passed, and eventually my mother came here and lived full time and passed away actually in the house that she knew her entire life.
Was it a house that had many bedrooms, or?
3 bedrooms, but there were people slept anywhere they could on the couches. I actually and my brother, we had beds on the porch, and so I always got the first son. In fact, one night about 3 a.m. I woke up to see that 106 Wisconsin was on fire. There was the corner house on Park Avenue, and we alerted the fire department. Came. Unfortunately, an infant and a dog perished in the fire. My father who was a NYPD cop, he got his ladder and tried to get up to the porch to get in, but he got hit back by the burning, the heat, and so that was very distressful. I think that was 1962, or because I was a beachcomber at that time, and I had to leave for work at before 6 a.m. with all the fire hoses lining the street.
What would you say is your best memory of Long Beach?
I have
You had to pick one.
I have many memories. I've always loved Long Beach. We moved from Brooklyn to Queens when I was 12. I've moved around the country, but the rock of my life is Long Beach. To have the opportunity, to come here, learn so much. I love the sea. I love the water. As you know, I'll put a plug for my book. This is Silver Strand, the Long Beach Saga. It's a history of Long Beach, an accurate history, I think Joanne will attest to. But I wrote it as a novel, so it's very easy to read along with, and it's got pretty nice reviews, but it was a lot of fun. I always wondered why the Long Beach Hotel, the Long Island Railroad built this magnificent Victorian hotel right here on the shore in 1880. And it burned down in spectacular fashion in 1907, just as William H. Reynolds was developing the city, putting it on the map literally. And that burned down. I always thought there might be a mystery related to that, and that got me thinking about murder at the Long Beach Hotel, for many years I pondered that, and then finally around 2012, after Hurricane Sandy, I put pen to paper or got on my keyboard, and over 10 years I wrote that while I was still practicing medicine, and I published it 4 years ago, just in time for the 100th anniversary of the city.
It's a wonderful book.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your perspective on the changes in Long Beach over the years?
Well, Long Beach was a very open place. Everybody during the summer knew their neighbors. We had virtually no fences around the homes. We could literally go from Virginia to Wisconsin Street. We could go behind the houses, around the houses. Nobody seemed to mind too much of the kids playing. We played in the street. We went to the beach. We went to the bay. And at that time, 90% of the West End was summer residents. We were not unique in being a summer-only resident. My friends who lived there all year round just loved September when everybody left and they could jump from roof to roof, and I don't know how many abandoned houses they went into. We would literally put up shutters on all the windows and lock the place up pretty well. We came down weekends, deep into the fall. I remember some cold days here, and of course once I started surfing I would come back after the summer. But everybody that comes to Long Beach tends to love Long Beach. It may not be quite as open as it was for a child, and certainly when my mother was a child it was extremely different. She talked about how the Long Beach, the West End, sort of ended at Minnesota, but there was a strand that connected to Atlantic Beach. They called East Atlantic Beach Sheer Beach back in those days, and the Lawrence Beach Club has been there for 150 years practically. And my mother also told the story that they had a boat that would come across from the yacht club in not Lynbrook, but
Is that Woodmere?
no, whatever was next to Hewlett, it begins with an L, I think. But
Lynbrook?
Not Lynbrook. Anyway, Lawrence, of course. So they had a ferry that worked on pulleys, and they would bring the kids over to the beach in the morning, and they had camps there for many years. And so people would walk down there. So Long Beach was sort of wide open. Now things are a little bit more organized. People went on the boardwalk back in the heyday, all dressed up in their fine regalia. But I don't think I walked the entire boardwalk till I was an adult. We sort of nowadays everybody's out there on the boardwalk, bicycling, walking, and enjoying the same things that people have enjoyed, just in slightly different ways.
But how about the changes specifically after Sandy to the West End?
Oh, well, that has just hit home. The Bossett that was right next to us at 101 Wisconsin. Unfortunately, the owner had to leave in the recent years, and so the property was sold off last year. And this summer we now have a 3-story, house next to us. It seems that with all the building, you don't get the wind as well as it used to. I went to one of the summer concerts, I think it was 3 years ago, and it ended in the dark, and I walked back home, and we're all the way almost on Park Avenue, and I got halfway down the street, and I wasn't sure if I was on the right street because I didn't recognize any of the houses. But that's nowadays, and other families are coming and enjoying it. It certainly has helped property values, although that may, price some people out of it. My grandaunt's ability to buy the lot and bring the house in 1921-22 was due to the fact that Reynolds, his enterprise had gone a bit of cropper. They had run out of money, and he was going to build the estates of Long Beach into the West End with the red roofed and the white stuccoed houses, except he couldn't do it. So he had made an arrangement, I believe, with the town of Lawrence that he would bring the infrastructure in if he got the properties. So instead of having these lots that we have here in the center of town, they made 40 by 60 lots. Now, probably originally there would not have been 40 by 60 lots. There would have been those would have been at least 4 lots. And the lots would have gone, these mega lots would have gone from the big avenue to the smaller avenue. There wouldn't have been 2 houses on that, back to back there. And so, the story is that the narrow streets were put in for the servant entrances for what would have been these estates or mansion-like homes that we see here in the center of town. So, 40 by 60 is not a big lot. But there was one of the doctors who originally owned on Laurelton Boulevard, not far from here, Dr. Anthony Finoni, owned an acre. He had an acre, and he built the Villa Mostina because he was from Italy and he wanted to recreate his homeland. And there are pictures of that in Roberta Fiore's book, The Images of Long Beach, along with many other great pictures and great little stories. So the houses in the West End are different. Parking has always been an issue, and there still is. And in a way, there are four cars for every parking spot. So, sometimes I have to walk from Wisconsin to Grand Boulevard to find a parking spot. And as we get older, that's my little public service announcement. We need to find a real solution to parking in the West End.
And did your family choose after Sandy not to raise the bungalow because of historical reasons?
I think for nostalgic reasons, perhaps, but we, once again, it's still a summer place. 3 of us own it. We, my siblings who owned homes in Long Beach before, 2 of them had to tear down their houses and start from scratch. In fact, my sister Irene's house was on the tour as one of the first modular houses that were brought in after Sandy. They needed money to rebuild it, So the 3 of us who live outside of Long Beach bought them out, and we're all still good friends despite that, so everybody's happy. We had to spend some money to, we had to partially gut the house and get rid of the mold and do some fine tuning, reflooring, putting a new wallboard and whatnot. So it was, we didn't have insurance, as I mentioned, and we didn't feel that we had a legitimate claim to any federal funds.
And how about your children and grandchildren? Do they enjoy Long Beach as much as you do, or is that impossible?
Absolutely. My brother Bill, who was here the first 2 weeks this summer, he has, I think it is 8 or 9 grandchildren less than 7 years of age, and they were all down here. There's a lot of pictures on Facebook of them enjoying it. My kids enjoy it as well. One lives upstate, one lives in Minnesota, and the other one lives in Westchester, which we joke is upstate as well. And so my daughter is coming in next week from Minnesota to spend some time here. And as I said, my other sister, she was here last week, and her kids came in.
So could you give us 5 words that, in your opinion, describe Long Beach?
The beach, the beach, the beach, the beach, the beach.
Okay. And how about any message to the Long Beach community?
Well, just enjoy it, love it, keep it nice and clean, and learn the history of Long Beach. This is why we are here doing this little story as a member of the Historical Society. And although I'm quite knowledgeable, I learn something new every time I come over here. People should visit this place. It's magnificent in its interior. All the work that's gone on the last couple of years under people like Joanne and Jeannie and all the other people. Phyllis, who's here with the garden today. Join the society and learn more about your history, which is this great town that William Reynolds set out to make a playground. And it was initially the playground for maybe the rich, but it's a playground for the common man, and it has been for me, my friends, and a lot of people who are still coming here.